one of the things that I talk about a lot on this channel and this podcast is the importance of mindfulness, the importance of sitting back and reflecting on the general dynamics of your mind, things that you're inclined to pay attention to, your certain habits, your dispositions to lose yourself in certain thought patterns, certain behavioral patterns. You know, all of this is connected to. Sorry, I just knocked my guitar. All of this is connected to the central issue of taking sovereignty over your mind and thereby protecting yourself against external distraction, against all the things outside of you that is vying to extract and take away your conscious energy. Because I look around at our modern world, a modern media environment particularly, and I see just how pernicious the extent to which distraction and bullshit and triviality, the mundane, there are so many things out there, not just on social media, but mainstream media, um, advertisements, even in TV shows, reality TV, movies. There's a lot in the media landscape which seems to, really parasitize people's minds to distract them from the things that they care most about and perhaps ought to care most about, you know. And I find it surprising how mindfulness is not really educated, it's not really emphasized in our sort of conventional educational systems. We teach students to learn to attest, to learn all this stuff that they're going to forget within like a couple years' time. All this stuff about science, physics, chemistry, which I'm not dismissing those sorts of things, but I think our sort of conventional educational system leaves a lot to be desired. I think it really does. It corrodes the students' ability to really enjoy the pursuit of learning, the pursuit of knowledge, understanding. It really, it twists it, and then people are put into these sort of educational rat races where they're just chasing grades, chasing attainment, rather than actually trying to understand more about themselves and their minds and the sovereignty that comes with actualizing as an individual. It's but that's a whole different sort of discussion, but it's connected to this sort of the central problem, which I think that a lot of people, they're not really given the tools to navigate this modern world that we're situated in, and particularly just the amount of distractions everywhere, the amount of shiny objects that are designed to captivate you, to lure you in with this beauty and shininess. It's and so many people get lost into it. They get lost into doom scrolling, to binging TV shows, to scrolling endlessly on Instagram or TikTok, or they get captivated by whatever fast food chain is trying to shove absolute sludge down your throat. All the advertisements. It's just, I'm lucky. On all my digital devices, I'm sure I have ad block on, because I do not want my consciousness being just warped like that. I'm very specific. I'm very conscious of the things that I allow into my mental world, because I'm very aware of how, when I sometimes allow in pretty corroding influences, it can pervert my mind, it perverts my well-being, and it can send me into sort of ruminative cycles, and it can really just put a general stain on my conscious awareness when my attention is captured and dwelling on something that is, it just gets me in a depressive loop sometimes. You know, when you're sitting there worrying, and you're sitting in a state of anxiety and fear, and these are sort of emotional states that really contract your consciousness, they contract your awareness, they make it smaller, they make you more edgy, less open to other people, less open to the joys, the delights, the play of life. And it saddens me to see how this sort of attention economy we have, which is as well you could call a distraction economy, it does not serve the function of raising people's consciousness. It serves the function of shrinking and contracting people's awareness so that they're in a state of fear, so that they're in a state of anxiety regarding themselves and the state of the world. And, you could perhaps call it a psyop. I think that's a reasonable term to use. And the psyop is, you can, it's, I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but if we think about, say, the mainstream media, the conventional sort of news channels that are they tend to always have a negativity bias. Like the whole saying goes, if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't lead. And I guess this is sort of reflecting a bit upon our own sort of innate survival-oriented psychology, which is that things that are threatening, they inherently capture our attention more than things that are, relatively optimistic. And there are evolutionary reasons for this. It's dying is a lot worse than getting slightly more energy from the environment. Because you can't get back from dead, unfortunately. Um, but this sort of evolved bias that we have to be more attentionally attuned to negative and threatening things. Unfortunately, there are certain entities in the world, certain organizations who realize that they can, profit from that. They can benefit from, exploiting this attentional bias that we have. And, it's and we see this reflected in the sort of the news media that is typically exposed to us. If you watch the news for 10, 20 minutes, it's not typically an enjoyable experience. It's more just a curation of all the bad things that are going on in the world. And notice how after watching something like that, you are almost experiencing what's called vicarious trauma. And vicarious basically means that it's not you're directly experiencing the trauma, you're indirectly experiencing the trauma through the medium of TV or the screen. And it's a similar thing with social media algorithms, which are again, optimizing for what keeps you engaged fundamentally. So it is a raw commodification of your consciousness, of your attention. That's what's treated as the marketable good, the relevant data point that the apps are observing, they're registering, and it's the only thing they really care about. They don't care about necessarily raising your consciousness, raising your vibrations, making you feel more happier, enjoyed, and satiated in your life. They just care about keeping your eyeballs on that thing. And this is, it is what it is. And we can't immediately change it. We can't immediately change the algorithms and what they're optimizing for. But what we can do is alter the way that we consciously engage with these devices, with these screens, with the news cycles. And we can understand that, okay, when I spend X amount of time on this thing, do I feel better? Do I feel more engaged in the world, or do I feel like I'm worrying more about the world? Do I feel just more anxious and depressed? And if spending your time, your conscious time, your attention on these sorts of things, if it is not serving you well in your general interactions with life, with yourself, with other people, then I think you need to seriously contemplate, reducing it. This isn't to say that you shouldn't be engaged in the world, you shouldn't be aware of the events that are going on. But often, all this doom scrolling, all this attentional fixation on all the terrible things that are going on, it doesn't make you more equipped psychologically to seriously engage with them. It just puts you in a state of fear and threat, and then you can't really act. You freeze up psychologically. You can't really enjoy stuff. You can't enjoy the delights of life at all. So I guess what I want all this to sort of culminate in is I want you to be much more aware of the things that you pay attention to, much more aware of the things that you allow into your mental bubble, your conscious bubble. And because when you become more aware of the things that you allow into your awareness, you also become more aware of the things that are much more toxic, the things that are entering your awareness and they're staining your body and mind with this sort of yuckiness, And, you shouldn't try and gaslight yourself into thinking that, oh, everything's great, I can just ignore all this shit. What you got to do is integrate it and continue to work on the cultivation of your consciousness, work on this general goal of, you may call it raising your vibrations or raising the bliss, the well-being of your mind, which isn't just a hedonistic thing of, you know, sticking some electrodes in your dopamine circuit of your brain and just razzing up fucking pleasure. This is, you know, cultivating the quality of your mind, which is something that I think, we're all thrust here. We all have something to do. And I think part of a lot of the reason we are here is to come to a deeper knowing of ourselves, a deeper understanding of our awareness. And it doesn't say that you should sit and meditate for 6 hours a day, but meditation is of course important, but it doesn't need to be done just simply sitting down on a cushion. You can do it in every moment of experience. It's simply paying attention. But paying attention isn't the only thing. You've also got to act. But then when you're thinking about the relationship between attention and then action, that's a whole different thing. That's trying to link your thoughts and your actions. But maybe I'll leave that for another discussion, because I think the relationship between our minds, our attention, our thoughts, and then later our sort of actions, the actual behaviors that we do in the world, that's a tricky thing, and it's something that I'm working through. All these podcasts that I do, these are not things that I would consider myself an expert in at all. They're just things that interest me, that I feel a yearning to sort of yap about. But I'm figuring out just as much as you are. But yeah, I hope that's been interesting and insightful. Enjoy the rest of your day.